And I just thought, well, I'm not going to survive this. Here I am, on my own, in the dark, on the third ice mountain in the world, not much lower than Everest or K2. And it's now a humongous snowstorm, and I can't find my way in the dark. I did have a head torch, but all my tracks were filled in. And so I just realised I was probably dead, because I was going to get avalanched, because the first rule of not getting avalanched is don't go out during or for 24 hours after a snowfall. And I'm in this humongous snowfall.
So, very warm welcome to the latest edition of the Outward Bound Alumni podcast, Outward Bound and me. And I am joined today by the inimitable Alan Hinkes OBE.
Pleasure.
Cheers for doing it, mate. We really appreciate you. Yeah. How are things?
Great.
You all right?
Yeah.
Look very smart today.
Yes, well, as you know, we've both been to this celebrity lunch in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
With Sir Chris, an old friend of mine, I've been on Expeds with him. And of course, it's 50 years since he led the southwest base of Everest, and which is a fantastic, a seminal, that's the word I'm thinking of. Yeah. Anyway, fantastic expedition. Of course, the first Brits stood on the summit of Everest 50 years ago. So I've got a suit on for that occasion with my Outward Bound tie.
And your rope tie as well.
Yeah, which you don't often get me in a suit, although I have to have a suit on for another 50th do tomorrow. And so I do wear suits now and again. But I'd rather be me outdoor rig in the hills,
I bet,
at an OB centre or wherever.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming today and for doing the pod. So, I just want to say about that event today, I think... I love working at Outward Bound, but to hear Chris talk about our work and the connection he has to our work, it's heartwarming.
Living legend, Chris, isn't he? Great.
Living legend. But you're also a living legend, and you've got your rope tie on today because you are an Outward Bound alumnus, and you did your mountain leadership course at Ullswater in 1974.
Yeah, God, I can't believe it. That's 50 years ago. And did my MLC, as it were called, then, that leadership course. I was a student, I guess, doing it. Did it fairly early in my career. It was rather interesting. I remember the week before I was supposed to do it, I went over on my ankle and sprained my ankle. I nearly broke it. I really badly sprained or strained my ankle. So I somehow hobbled into Ullswater Outward Bound and said, I don't think I can do the week's assessment. I've damaged my ankle. I think it'd be all right next week. So I don't know, it's probably only 20 or something, or 19. Can I come back next week? Luckily, they had a course the following week, and they let me defer it for a week, and my ankle was strong enough. I strapped it up, and I managed to do the course the following week. Good. It was brilliant. And I had a fantastic time. And that was my proper introduction to OB. I've been back quite a few times since, sometimes on corporate events, and now a lot with alumni events. Yeah, great.
Yeah, you've been a great supporter of the alumni, the group over the last few years, Alan. We're really grateful for that.
I should say I made friends over the years, just calling it obeisance, like the one at Lockheed when Tony ran it. Yeah. Tony Shepherd. And an OB quite a lot, because I'm often in Patterdale, not far away, things like that. Eskdale, I pass quite often, but I haven't got as stronger links with Eskdale. I'd like to go there more, because it's an amazing setting. And then Abu Dhabi, I think I've only been once. I'm not so sure about Abu Dhabi. Don't know it that well, It's in Welsh Wales and that, but I must go more.
Yeah. You're always very welcome. So we'll come on to your Outward Bound connection a little bit later, if that's okay. But just for those of you that are tuning in and might not know about Alan, so I suppose you're most famous for being the first Brit to climb all of the 14 mountains over 8,000 metres, which is just a phenomenal achievement. I'd love to dive into that a bit more. So this podcast, we talk about what you did before Outward Bound. So maybe you could tell us, Alan, just a bit about your childhood and how you came into connection with climbing.
Well, I was born in Romanby, which is actually a suburb of Northallerton. So I generally just say Northallerton, which is the county town of the North Riding. It's now the county town of North Yorkshire.
Are you an honorary citizen?
Oh, yeah, I'm an honorary citizen of Northallerton, which is great. So my name's up in the town hall and whatever, and I'm in Northallerton. Got to do in Northallerton soon that I'll have to wear a suit for. I'm also patron of the Forum there, which is like a sort of theatre cum community centre that was built, I guess, 50 years ago by the council, and then they divested themselves of it. And the charity runs it now. They show films and have plays on, and comedians come, that sort of thing, And so I'm patron of that. So, anyway, I digress with that, Born and bred in Romanby, Northallerton, and I was always adventurous. In fact, I could read from this book, which says how I've been... Shall I read a bit from my book? Yeah. No, I won't yet. I haven't happened to have brought my book because you're aware of it, but of course it's just to show I am an author as well.
You are an author, yeah.
And this book of mine, which I hope people buy it and read it, although it's got loads of photos in, I always say it's a value for money book because it weighs 1.5 kilos. But I could read a bit from the first chapter, if you like. And this basically says, when you're asking me where it all started, you know, I said, I've always been adventurous. As a child, I was outside at every opportunity, raking about, as they say in Yorkshire, exploring the becks, woods and fields near where I lived in Northallerton. And then on family drives into the Yorkshire Dales and the North York Moors, seeing things like Rosebery Topping, which is a fantastic little mountain in North Yorkshire. I felt attracted to the wild, rugged, hilly landscape. But then in my teens, when the chance came to take up rock climbing on trips with the Northallerton Grammar School, the seed was well and truly sown, and it quickly germinated into a passion, eventually becoming a way of life. I knew from the first time that I went out onto the moors and fells that it's where I wanted to be. It was a kind of calling. And then I go on to say going out in the hills of northern England was an exciting adventure then days, because especially in bad weather, as it often is, windy and wet. But I learned to cope with that, and I enjoyed inclement weather. But if you want to go winter mountaineering, you've got to go in the hills when it's snowy and icy, and obviously you've got to know what you're doing, you know. So, but anyway, so I'm not reckless, shall we say. Anyway, I go on about how it was a bit more committing in them days. There was no GPS, no cell phones like everybody has now, but geography was my favourite subject. I was great at map reading, and I delighted in the challenge of navigating and learning about how to map read in poor visibility, and I delighted in the challenge of navigating in bad weather. And I'd often go out on the North York Moors in thick hill fog and rain just for fun, to practice map, compass and navigation skills, which is just what we do with OB. And the vagaries of dense cloud, rain and wind on the hills and fells didn't put me off. I enjoyed the battle against the elements, and then sometimes just for fun, and I did this before OB, I impelled myself into this, sometimes just for fun, I'd go out onto the moors for a survival experience and spend a night in a bivvy bag, which is just a big heavy-duty plastic bag about the size of a sleeping bag, as you know. And I learnt about exhaustion, exposure and hypothermia, and I developed an innate resilience that served me well. And that's just the first page of my book, and then I go on to say how I did more and more in the lakes and Scotland in winter and the Alps, and then obviously went on to the Himalaya.
So there's a quote by John Muir who said, the mountains are calling and I must go.
Yeah.
Did you, like, was it almost like inside you, do you think, when you found that it was something that resonated with you, that it just kind of, you felt it and then you decided to learn more about it?
Yeah, it did,
to grow.
for sure. And some people are probably, feel that tennis is in them and they become tennis players and they get richer than mountaineers. Some people feel footballers and they become soccer players and they get richer than mountaineers, and so on and so forth. But for me, it was just the mountain. Going into the mountains, it was a calling. And then I realised some of the mountains I wanted to do would have technical bits on them, which is why I took up rock climbing, so I could get up the more tricky bits, and then rock climbing took over, you could say, and then winter mountaineering and alpine mountaineering, and then I eventually became a mountain guide. I have the same qualification as a Swiss or a French guide, so I'm a fully qualified mountain guide. That's sort of jumping ahead, I mean, I could read another a little section from this book about how when I first went up Helvellyn, it was in the summer, I think I was only 15 with a school trip, and it was wet and windy, and all I had to stop me dying of exposure was a cycle cape. Nobody seems to have them nowadays, but a cycle cape is literally just a plastic cape you put round you, and it just in the wind it just acted like a parachute. It was trying to suck me off the ridge, drag me off the ridge to my death, but even that didn't put me off. I wanted more, and since then I've worked with young people, sometimes 15-year-olds, sometimes 25-year-olds, university students from 19 to 25, and if it was bad weather like that, they soon get put off. But bizarrely or interestingly, when I look back philosophically, the bad weather didn't put me off. I had something in me where I wanted, to experience the bad weather and pit myself against it. And it was a challenge, Okay, I like going out and nice sunny days in the hills. That's great, but the bad weather doesn't put me off. I love it.
I guess just learning more about your career and stuff, it didn't put you off because you then soon found yourself scaling the north face of the Eiger and then going into the Himalayan mountains to push yourself, beyond what most people could even imagine. So when do you think it clicked in? So from just enjoying it and challenging yourself to being something that you could see like a career or a passion that you were going to follow?
It's a tricky one, but I always aspired to doing the bigger routes, and so I served what was called a traditional apprenticeship. You could say I went to Scotland in winter, and that is suffering. Scotland in winter, in blizzards coming in with the westerly winds. It is a harsh training ground. If you can do Scotland in winter, you can just about climb anywhere. It doesn't have the extreme altitude, it's not the death zone, like 8,000 metres.
Yeah.
And then I, went on to the Alps, as you say, and did things like the North versus the Highlands. So I always aspired to those higher peaks. So I guess I aspired to the Himalaya as well. I did have to do a bit of a sort of normal job. You could sit there for a while. I did teach for about 7 years, but my first job was out the Red, so it was like an OB centre. It was an LEA run outdoor centre where I took young people out, secondary school children mostly, out rock climbing and river studies, geography and geology field trips and climbing. So that was a fantastic job. And I could see the change in these children. They're under 18, so let's call them children, but they don't like being called children, do they? Could see the change in these young people in a week. And it was Friday to Friday, the courses usually. And even at the time, when I think back, and I'd be a young man of about 22 to 29 or something, and I could see the change in them in a week, because it was residential, they were away from home, and you were impelling them into the outdoors, going rock climbing with them or taking them out down for a walk in the fells. And I remember I was amazed as a young man. My God, look at the way these change just in 5 years. And then latterly, I've been doing it with university students, adults, and you can see they're changing them in a week.
Yeah.
And you take them out of the comfort zone. It's basically comfort, stretch, and panic zone, the three zones. And these most university students, in the first year, unless they're farming kids, been brought up on a farm, most of them haven't been into the lakes. And certainly I wouldn't take them up the footpaths in the lakes. I'd take them off the footpaths on the open access land. And they're all well out of the comfort zone. Yeah. So and obviously OB does the same. But anyway, I always like being out of my comfort zone, but that is my comfort zone, shall I say. And then going to the Himalaya, you can get, and the Alps, well, Scotland in winter, but the Alps and the Himalaya, and you can get horrendous inclement weather. And obviously in the Himalaya, you've got the death zone as well, which is above 8,000 metres, where humans can literally only live for a matter of hours. You're lucky if you'll survive for 48 hours, and that's because the air's too thin, not enough oxygen, not enough air pressure. If it gets too windy, you'll literally be blown off. It's the jet stream winds. So certainly to climb in the Himalaya or Scotland in winter, you've got to be able to suffer. And I always said, but I was born to suffer because I was born in Yorkshire. I'm used to suffering, I had a really hard paper round when I was a young kid, So I think you have got to be able to suffer to do serious mountaineering, as opposed to rock climbing in the sun or on an indoor wall,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a bit more? Because when I was listening, I've heard you talk about this before, and I've heard Sir Bonington talk about it, and the other mountaineers. But I do think there is a very bespoke mindset that you must have to kind of want to be in that, not just the inclement weather in Scotland, but to push yourself to achieve what you have with the 8,000ers. Do you think that was innate in you, or did that grow over time? Because you need a certain mindset to want to do that, or to be able to achieve it. I
think it's probably innate. Yeah. Obviously it grows as well, but some people just don't have it. I've climbed with some people and they just can't bear the suffering, and eventually, they've been on expeditions with me to the Himalayas, and eventually they've cracked at base camp. God, can't take this anymore, and they go home. But they can be really, crack rock climbers. They can be really good rock climbers. They can be really good ice climbers, but they just can't do the suffering, I guess. You've got to be able to suffer. And I hesitate to make military analogies, really, but sometimes these big expeditions, like we've just been celebrating Chris, Bonington, but some of these big expeditions, some of the 8,000 I climbed, they're almost like military campaigns. I often did them lightweight, just me and another climber, but there'd sometimes be other expeditions there, which might be bigger, that have, half a dozen to a dozen people on them, and unfortunately people would be getting killed. So it was a bit like going on a military campaign with the odd people getting killed. There's avalanches coming down, which is a bit like incoming mortar, and nothing you can do about it. Objective danger. Subjective danger you can control, which is knowing yourself and knowing when enough is enough and when to back off and things like that. And as you know, I have a motto that no mountain's worth a life. Coming back's a success, and the summit is only a bonus. So I would always try and back off, even if I was only a few hours from the summit.
Yeah. Nice.
And then I would celebrate back in base camp with a cup of hot milky tea with whole milk, none of this semi-skimmed stuff,
Yeah, no, I've made that mistake once, giving you a cup of tea.
With semi-skimmed,
Yeah, never again. Yeah. So I wanted to ask a bit more about that, because when I remember you gave a talk once that I listened to, and unfortunately I can't remember what mountain you were referring to, but you were descending from a mountain, and you were, it was dark, and you were encompassed by an avalanche. Is that right?
I mean, there's various things. You might be thinking about the last 8,000 I climbed, my final one, Kangchenjunga, when I was coming down. Well, I went to not stupid because it worked, but I did get to the top late in the day on Kangchenjunga just before dark. There's not really any twilight in those latitudes, so I got to the top of Kangchenjunga, the third highest mountain in the world, at about 7:15 at night, let's say 7:30. It was pitch black.
Yeah.
So I took an arm's length a picture of myself, which now you'd call a selfie. They weren't called selfies then in 2005. So I invented the selfie on top of the third highest mountain in the world, Kangchenjunga, and called it an arm's length. And you can see in the photograph I've got ice all around my face. And then I did that little video clip, and then it got pitch black, and I had to descend on my own in the dark. I'd made... a Nepalese friend was coming up with me to start with, but he'd backed off, and I'd had to carry on my own solo to the summit. And it was a near-death experience because I presumed I was going to get avalanched, and because I was stuck in a storm and it was pitch black. And
that's right,
And I did have a panic attack on the summit. I literally was hyperventilating and shaking like a leaf. I can't emulate now, and that's because I am a realist. And you know, and I just thought, well, I'm not going to survive this. Here I am on my own in the dark on the third highest mountain in the world, not much lower than Everest or K2. And it's now a humongous snowstorm, and I can't find my way in the dark. I did have a head torch, but all my tracks were filled in. And so I just realised I was probably dead, you know, because I was going to get avalanched, because the first rule of not getting avalanched is don't go out during or for 24 hours after a snowfall. And I'm in this humongous snowfall. Anyway, somehow I pulled myself together and stopped hyperventilating and focused on what I could call the tactical task of finding the way down. And I had to put the strategic picture into a little box in my head, the anxiety or fear in a little box, and forget about it. And once I did that, I remember the fear just dropped off me. It was like unzipping a onesie, and I stepped out of it, and that was the fear. And then I just focused on the tactical task of getting down, staying alive. And then it was just sheer enjoyment. And luckily, about 1 a.m, it was a 27-hour round trip, that pretty exhausting. Luckily, Pasang, my Nepalese friend, survived as well. I came across him at 1 a.m, we had a good cuddle, and we both got down to our high bivouac. But anyway, it's more succinctly written up in my book, that, which me whittering on about it.
No, it's fine, because you've told that story before. I heard you tell that story, and particularly about the threat of an avalanche on the way down. But you shared with me the clip, and we can put it into this so the people that are watching can see.
Finally made it here. This is the only bit of video I've got. There's a picture of Fiona and Jay. Pasang's below. God knows what time it is. It must be 7 at night. This is really serious. Could die on the descent. And I'm not joking.
But I think even though I've known you for a while, that clip brought home the severity of the environment in which you were in, and you had the photo of Fiona with you.
Yeah.
And I know that's your I think you referred to that as your summit flag.
Yeah.
You had your photo of Fiona.
Yeah.
And then there was that realisation of you've made it, you showed the summit, and then that you could die. And that's I mean,
poignant. When I look at it myself, I realised.
How do you feel
even
looking
then,
back,
as I'm filming myself at arm's length, there's a little video. I knew I was probably might have pushed the envelope too much on that one, you know. And I remember thinking, well, if I find my body, this digital video might have lasted. You know, someone might find it and that sort of thing. But it's interesting that now we're getting flags put up everywhere, but I've never bothered with a flag. I'm proud to be British, I'm proud to be English, I'm proud to be Yorkshireman, but I never took the White Rose of Yorkshire, never took the Cross of St George, and nor did I take the Union flag, the Union Jack. Though there was once I did hold the Union Jack on top of one of my 8,000, that's because I was with a military expert, and they always take one. But every other nation I would climb with, usually they'd take the flag. And they'd often fly the flag on the summit or hold the flag out. Yeah. And I just didn't think it was necessary, whether it was jingoism or what. I thought it was more important my flag would be a picture of my daughter Fiona, which she went with me to the summit of each mountain in a photo. And that reminded me I had to get back down as well, because she wanted her pocket money when I got back, you know. And, but so it's interesting now, I'm not anti the flags that have been put up. I think we shouldn't be embarrassed about our flags, but I never thought it was necessary to take one. You know, if you want to fly one, fly one.
Yeah. Have you ever asked your daughter, who was at the event today, it was lovely to see her again, how she felt about that being your summit flag, how she felt I mean, was she? How old was she at the time of that, for example?
Well, I mean, she was very young to start with,
Yeah.
and then she'd be probably. Well, she did, when she got into her teens, she did start to realise she could lose her dad anyway, and she wanted an interview for ITV where someone did ask her that question.
Oh, okay.
And I showed that in my talks, and Fiona was about 15 or 16 at the time, and she's on Yorkshire telly saying, not flippantly, but quite, not matter-of-factly, what's the word, quite philosophically, she's saying, well, my dad's always been a climber, I've always known,
Okay.
you know, that it's dangerous I know it's dangerous what he does now, something like that, she says, but he's always come back and he always will. And so she was confident I would always come back. And
Yeah.
luckily I did, so we say, you know.
I'm sure she was confident.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, seeing her dad on TV, and also going back to that point about teaching as well, you are pushing young people, as we do at Outward Bound, out of their comfort zone. But they do look to you for inspiration, and they look to our instructors for inspiration. 'Cause it's almost that assurance that I can go out of my comfort zone too. So I am being impelled, and I understand that, and I'm in a way comfortable, or at least assured to be able to do it. So we're doing some really interesting work around choice theory at Outward Bound, and building rapport with young people, and walking towards young people so that we can gain their trust, and through that we're able to push them further. And I think that's really important. So.
I was aware, like I say, I could see the change in young people when I was a young teacher, and then I
Yeah.
could see recently, the last few years working with university students, which are adults, but it doesn't boost my ego, but it is rather nice and salutary when sometimes people even say to you how you influence me. And, you know, I've met adults that I taught when I was a teacher, you know, who were children at the time, you know, secondary school children, and say, oh, yeah, remember you at that centre? And,
Yeah.
oh, that was the best week of our lives. And
Brilliant.
things like that. I'm sure, and OB instructors have the same. People come up to them and go, my God, you know, that was one of the best weeks of my life, you know.
100%.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have the privilege of talking to our alumni every day and hearing stories and reflections. And what fascinates me as someone interested in language is often they talk about it in the present tense. No, it's fascinating how long the impact endures, I think, for Outward Bound, and that kind of, well, for anyone that did a course pre sort of mid-80s might have done it for a month as well. So there was a long impactful
But as I say, a week
yeah.
can make a difference, can make a big change. But a month, would really change it,
And our summer adventure courses, they're pushing 3 weeks now, the biggest pinnacle courses.
Yeah.
So it's still a challenging course, definitely. Even the 5 days, 'cause as you say, impact you can make in a minute. But when you're there for 5 days and it's a big change of environment, it can make a big impact too. Let's go back to the 8,000 meters. Right. So your final one was Kangchenjunga, the one we've just spoken about, and you summited there 2005.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So 20 years ago.
Yeah. 30 years ago was K2, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Which was a big thing when I did it. But Kanch, the last one, was good as well.
Tell me about the last one, because I'd love to know, because I've heard you talk about K2 before and the Savage Mountain.
Yeah.
Interesting to hear a story about that. But just going back to your last one, did you feel, because at the time I think you were the 13th man to have done it, and fewer people had
one had
walked
already
on the
died,
moon.
so I was one of 12 when I
Okay.
did it, which is the same number of people that stood on the
Stood on
moon.
the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Met Buzz Aldrin twice.
You
as
met
well
Buzz Aldrin?
once, yeah,
Did
that
you?
was good. I'm digressing with that. But, and I thought I won't ask him the same inane questions. So I said, I'm in a club like you, Buzz. You're only one of 12.
Uh-huh.
And I'm one of 12. There's only 12 people done all the world's highest mountains. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's probably 24, well, there might be 40 people done it now.
Don't
I don't
know,
know.
yeah.
But at the time, I was one of 12, and he was one of 12.
Okay.
But he still was a bit like that.
Yeah.
I thought he'd have gone, oh, really? You're in a club of 12? Like, what's that then? And I'd have said it's all the 40 and 8,000, but no, he wasn't really interested.
Wasn't impressed?
No.
Oh, well.
Well, to be fair, I was impressed with him. He stood on the moon.
Yeah, exactly. Right, fascinating club to be a part of. I don't know. I don't want to ask how did it feel after you'd finished it, but I guess that is sort of what I want to know. Was it because I know there were 26 attempts? Is that right?
No, it was 27-ish, I think. Yeah, because I always say it was 27 attempts I had to do all 40.
Yeah.
And I class that as 27,
As 27
successes.
Yeah.
Not 14 successes and 13 failures.
So that's something that really.
There's no mountain's worth of life coming back
Exactly.
to success, and something's only a bonus, you know. Yeah.
So you say you
No mountains, I'm sorry, but no mountains are worth a digit either.
Yeah.
And so I've also managed to avoid getting frostbite. And the first person who all 14 was the great Rhino Mesner, Italian mountaineer. And he was the first person who all 14. He's a living legend. He's still alive.
Yeah.
But he's had all his toes amputated. So, and I've managed to avoid any of that. So although you might be a household name in Italy, and most mountaineers in the world have heard of him, and he's a great guy and a great mountaineer, and actually he's a multi-millionaire, I believe, and lives in a castle.
Yeah. And you've often said that you live to climb.
Yeah.
Is that the phrase? You live to climb?
Yeah, climbing enhances my life. I don't climb to die, I climb to live. Because some people think, oh, you're going to get killed and this, that, and the. In fact, I remember most people that try and do what I've done, the 8,000ers, don't do it. The reason they don't do it is because they get killed, which does sound right, but they do. Or they stop with, say, 9 or 10 and live happily, or who knows, maybe unhappily ever after. But most people that push on to the end, most don't make it. Most get killed on, say, the 12th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, because you do push a bit harder, and I have to admit I did push a bit harder to finish towards the end. The other ironic thing, I lived in the northeast, not in North Yorkshire at the time, although I was back in North Yorkshire for the final ones I was living. But anyway, lots of my mates would say to me, oh, Alan, you're on your like 12th, 8,000 now. Isn't it getting a bit of a trudge, and isn't it getting a bit scary? Don't you realise most people get killed on the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th? Aren't you getting more worried? Don't you want to give in? And I'm like, oh, thanks for the morale boost, guys, But ironically, or interestingly anyway, it was where I wanted to be. I didn't, there was cognitive dissonance there. If you're into psychology, I was well aware I could get killed. But it's where I wanted to be. Even though I was going into that combat zone over and over again, even on Kangchenjunga, my final one, and I got to base camp and I didn't think, oh my God, I could get killed here, like all my mates say, and I know most people do get killed, if not on the 13th, on the 14th. No, it's where I wanted to be. I was happy. But as soon as I'd finished Kanch with that near-death experience getting down and got back to base camp, and by then I had a sat phone in base camp. I didn't on the early ones. Got on the sat phone, first person I rang is Fiona, told her I was safe-ish, because I had to get back from base camp to Kathmandu, obviously. And then I rung maybe a couple of sponsors and other people and things like that. And I did feel a sense of relief in a way, actually it wasn't relief, it was more a sense of freedom. I didn't have to do an 8,000er again. I could do anything I want, and there are thousands of unclimbed mountains in the world, mostly around 5,000 or 6,000. Some of them are even unnamed, like I did go at the Tian Shan, which is on the border with Kyrgyzstan, just next to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and China. Climbed 5 unclimbed mountains and named them, and one I called Pete Fiona after my daughter. So
I didn't know that.
Loads of things like that to do. Yeah.
Very good.
I'll have to go and climb one, Peak OBE Ullswater or something like that. It's a bit long-winded, but what?
I reckon
Pete Dillon, that's what I'll have to do.
Yeah.
Name one Pete Dillon.
Possibly, although I struggled to get up Hallen Fell last year. So maybe I'll do a bit of training, then we can head out to the mountains. So I get that sort of sense of accomplishment after you've done something.
Yeah, there was accomplishment, but a freedom as well. But I get accomplishment still from climbing, and going out, whether it be just in the lakes. I still haven't done all the Wainwrights, so I've got to finish them off. So there's plenty for me to do in the Lake District. There's lots of stuff to do in Britain I'll just love doing. In fact, again, people often say, don't the hills of Britain, the lakes, the Yorkshire, Wales, Scotland, don't the hills, don't they pale into insignificance now if you've been to Himalaya? And I just go, no, they don't. They're just my old friends, and it's back to where it all started, on Helvellyn, in the lakes, and I think anyone who's a mountaineer, okay, if you're a Swiss mountaineer, you're going to say, the Swiss Alps are the best mountains in the world. But I think any mountaineer should have the Lake District in his top 10. I should say, as a Yorkshireman, the finest place to hill walk and climb in the world, of course, is the Lake District, which is Cumbria. But no, the Yorkshire Dales and Yorkshire's fantastic. But the lakes are special, they're very special. And so I'd like to think even Mesna would have the Lake District, or a Swiss mountain guide or a French mountain guide would have the Lake District. If not in the top 3, in the top 10. Something unique about the lakes. It's like a mini mountain range. Well, it is. It was a big mountain range, and it's been worn down a bit lower. So you don't have to, if you go to the Himalaya, you need a month to 3 months to climb a big mountain. If you go to the Alps, it can be several days to climb a mountain sometimes. Even Scotland, you're lucky if you can do a mountain in a day. But in the lakes, you can sometimes climb like Hallen Fell in half a day. And you feel like you've done a value for money mini mountain on top of Hallen Fell.
You've said that because you get high really quickly, and the views and the environment are just spectacular, aren't they?
Yeah, they're out of all proportion to the effort you put in. So,
exactly. So I want to talk about the stuff that you're doing with our alumni and the walks and the other things that we do. But I just want to touch on K2, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And Everest. So you did K2 30 years ago this year.
K2 was 95, and it was my third attempt. I had three goes for K2 over 3 consecutive years, 93, 94, and climbed it in 95. And I guess the first time I could have summited, there was just 4 of us, 2 teams of 2, but ended up having to rescue someone from near the top, really, and that took several days to get this walking. We did climb it down, and once we got him down, we were too exhausted to go back on the mountain.
Yeah.
The weather had changed.
Yeah.
Literally, these mountains like K2 and Everest, there's literally only a handful of days when you can summit. Which is one reason why you get that photograph of 200 people in a queue on Everest now, because if you've got 500 to 800 people attempting Everest, there's literally a handful of days, 10, 15 days maximum when you can summit Everest. So they're all going to go on that one day, if you see what I mean. I would wait and go another day, but then the weather window might close. So to put it in perspective, I know I've jumped ahead to Everest now.
No, that's fine.
There's nobody on Everest from the end of May to the following April. Everest is empty, essentially. So although you see a picture of 200 people, it is just a one day.
Just a one
the
day.
following day there might be 20, and the day after that none, and the day after that. Anyway, K2 took a lot of my time going back to it. I should have, a bit unfortunate, I didn't climb it that first time, but as I say, we were going to the top, me and a mate, and we expected to see 2 people coming down from another exped, but we only came across 1. You know, his mate had already, he was that exhausted, collapsed and slid off down the 4,000 metre south face. Obviously, he was pretty poorly at the bottom. In fact, you know, we've still never found him, you know, sadly dead. If we'd left his mate, he would have collapsed.
So you had
we
to
rescued
took his
him.
mate coming.
Yeah, and that was it. And then the weather window closed. Anyway, I went back the following year, and it's on the border between Pakistan and China. So the first year I attempted in Pakistan, the second year China, and I turned back 5 hours from the summit on my second attempt, even though it was a 5 months Britain to Britain trip, so remote, because I just thought that the slope's going to avalanche. It's too dangerous, you know, and I've no mountains worth of life. Coming back's a success. Summit's only road, so I turned around. And I was trying alone, a summit push, alone, solo, but there's 2 Spanish climbers there, and they did push on. Sadly, the slope did avalanche, and one was killed, and the other survived by the skin of his teeth, but ended up having all his fingers and toes amputated. And then I went back the third year running, joined an American K2 exped, and cutting a long story short, I just focused on it, and eventually I got to the top, but again I ended up pushing on and getting to the top on my own. My American climbing partner dropped back, so I soloed to the top, but on the same days, 2 Pakistanis and 2 Dutch. But there was only 5 of us summited in 95, and 8 were killed. That's how serious K2 is. More were killed than climbed it.
My goodness.
So, anyway, I did feel I'd done the hardest mountain in the world when I did that. It was what I'd focused on for 3 years. Some people said I was obsessed with it, which I don't think I was. But it did take, dare I say, I did dedicate, or dare I say, donate 3 years of my life to it, and then finally climbed it, and filmed on the summit, and then I also had 2 other mountains ready to climb in Pakistan, which I went back for the following year, 96. I also climbed Everest in 96. So it wasn't until 96 till I decided to do all 14. I never set out to do them all initially. So for 3 years I just focused on K2. In fact, I'd first seen K2 in 91 when I'd gone in to climb Broad Peak, a mountain near it, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to climb K2. It is the mountain, you know.
The savage,
like Rosebery,
the Savage Mountain.
Yeah, it's nicknamed the Savage Mountain. It takes no prisoners, shall we say. So I just felt I'd done perhaps the hardest mountain in the world when I'd done K2. Ironically, Kangchenjunga turned out to be as difficult, if not more difficult, my final 8,000er, and it's only 40 metres lower. So I would say Kangchenjunga's possibly harder than
Tougher
K2,
than K2,
to be honest.
wow.
And virtually as high, you know. Not as sexy because it's the third highest.
Yeah. I know we joke about promoting your book, and I really want to, because the Kangchenjunga one, I went down a rabbit hole with that the other day.
Oh, right.
Absolutely fascinating with the stories. So definitely, if people are interested to pick up a copy, that's my copy that you kindly signed for me.
With love to Dylan from Alan. It's got all your children in as well, and it's great.
Thank you. They've all read it, and they've all, you know, it's really interesting.
Most people just look at the pictures like a coffee table book, but it is rather salutary when people read it. They go, oh, that's a great read. And I did write it, not in Alpine Journal speak. You know, I didn't write it for the mountaineering world. I wrote it so that, well, mountaineers can enjoy it. In fact, a lot of mountaineers, when they read it, go, oh, it's fantastic. But I wrote it so that non-climbers could appreciate it, should I say.
Definitely.
You know?
Talk about Everest as well. So that was the year after K2, and you were invited by Brian Blessed, and was it ITV that covered it as well? Yeah. Will you just tell us a bit more about how it came about? And
Well, I was making
happens.
documentaries by then anyway,
Yeah.
and as it happened with ITV, I made several documentaries. A lot of them were called The Death Zone and things like that. So I'd filmed on the top of K2.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'd stayed in the summit of K2 a bit too long, but you should, probably haven't said this, but you literally should just stay on the top of an 8,000 at, 2 minutes, because you die and you're in the death zone, so you don't want to stay up there more than 2 to 5 minutes.
How long can humans realistic? Because this is, you've mentioned the death zone, so that's broadly the anything above 8,000 metres.
Or even 7.5, but certainly above 8 is the death zone. And it sounds very dramatic, the death zone, but it is the death zone because literally humans can't survive at that
with
altitude.
that.
I mean, you can't, even at base camp, which is 5,500 metres, you can't live there indefinitely. No humans live higher, really, than 4,500 metres, which is either in Tibet or Chile on the Altiplano. And some go up to work in tin mines at 5,000 metres in Chile. And I think some monks go up to 5,000 metres to live now and again. So realistically, even at base camp, you'd probably, if you lived there long enough, 5,500 metres, you'd possibly perish. But anyway, above 8,000, you'd die within, it would vary from a couple of hours to maybe 48 hours. But not many people had lived longer than 48 hours if you had a fantastic tent, a fantastic sleeping bag, if you had enough gas for a little gas stove to melt snow for water, you'd still perish at 8,000 metres within hours. So I'd filmed on the top of K2. That's how we got into it. And I actually spent too long on the summit of K2. You literally should only spend, a couple of minutes on the summit, get a quick photo, and then get down. So people ask me what it's like on these summits. Like K2, you get, well, I'm celebrating, wave a flag. No, you wave a flag, picture Fiona. But I don't feel my sense of satisfaction till I'm back in base camp and I've got this cup of warm milky tea. And then my cook, you always have a cook in base camp, usually an Ephel's cook, and he knows we're like, okay, I've dialed that a lot, which is curry and that. But when I get back from an exped, he cooks me fresh chips, fried egg and chapatis, and I make a chip butty with the chapatis, and the butter's dripping out of it. So that's when I celebrate, when I'm safe in base camp. There's no point in celebrating on the top of K2 or Everest, because you're in the death zone, you could perish at any time, and you've got to descend. And most accidents, sadly, happen on descent. Even in Briton, mountain rescue teams usually come out for people on the descent. It's pretty obvious. When you're descending, you've been out longer, you're more exhausted. But psychologically, people often turn off and think it's over and let the guard down descending. But not wishing to sound pompous, I've always saved enough for the descent, and that's because I don't focus on the summit, which can be classed as summit fever. I focus on base camp via the summit, i.e. it's a round trip. But on top of K2, I possibly spent 40 minutes. I spent too long. But I spent 3 years of my life trying to get there, and then I was making a documentary, so I did lots of GBs, filmed and did a piece to camera and things like that. And the two Pakistanis and the two Dutch just left, and the Dutch spoke perfect English, and one of them could have tapped me on the shoulder and said, get moving, And they didn't, but I didn't hold that against them because I wasn't part of their exped. But I'd saved enough in myself, physically and mentally, to get down. I did eventually, it was a bit like a dream. I think I do the voiceover in the documentary. It felt like the summit was made of porridge and I was stuck there. Basically, I was dying. The altitude was taking over. Somehow I pulled myself out of that reverie after filming and looking at the vista for 40 minutes and set off down. And I'd saved enough physically and I'd saved enough mentally, obviously, because I got down and I quickly overtook the two Dutch.
Did you?
And then I overtook the two Pakistanis, and I got down to what's called the shoulder at just under 8,000 metres, about 7,009, at about 10 at night. Again, I pushed it, got on K2 and pushed the envelope and got to the top lane. I got down about 10 at night and I'd left a little bivouac tent there. And I should have carried on even lower, because if a storm had broken, I'd have never got down the next day. I remember the others didn't get down until about 2 in the morning, but luckily the weather stayed windless, or fairly windless, and calm. And I remember lying in the tent at that altitude, just under 8,000 metres, or virtually at 8,000 metres, and I remember I said thank you out loud, because I'm not religious, but I wanted to hedge my bets maybe, and I just thank you out loud to somebody or something. There could be a God there, couldn't there? And I shouldn't have said thank you, obviously, until I was back in base camp. When I've got that mug of tea, that's when I'm safe. But I just felt the seventh sense that the weather was going to hold and let us get down. So I said thank you at 8,000 metres on the way down. I spent from 10 at night till maybe 5 the next morning when it was daylight and set off down, And I did get back to base camp, okay. I remember when I got back to base camp, I lay in my tent. I'd cook a tea and maybe I had something to eat, and then I lay in my tent trying to recover and sleep. I remember when I closed my eyes in the tent, I've never been able to, it's hard to emulate the feeling. I just felt I was floating in a black pit. I couldn't feel the sleeping bag around me, and I couldn't feel the floor underneath me. I was just that exhausted. I was just floating in a black pit when I closed my eyes. But it was a great feeling. I felt I'd done K2, you know, the Savage Mountain. To most mountaineers, K2 is the gold medal, the first prize. It means more than Everest. I've done K2 anyway. Long-winded way of saying it. So I'd filmed on the top of K2, the hardest mountain in the world. So ITN thought, well, he's the cameraman to film on Everest. So they employed me to film Brian Blessed's attempt of Everest. So I was lucky. I didn't have to organise an exped to Everest, didn't have to find any money. I got a small fee, not a massive fee, but I got a small fee as a cameraman. And I didn't think, I just thought, well, it's not going to be a problem. I'll be able to time Everest. And that sounds flippant, but I thought, well, I've done K2, should be able to do Everest, which I did. And I got the top of Everest, and I remember thinking, oh, I better appreciate this then, I better have a look round. I remember looking across at Lhotse, the fourth highest mountain in the world, which I thought, I'll have to do that. And I remember looking at the line, thinking, that's the line I'll take. It was this big chimney line. So I do remember looking across at Lhotse and thinking, I might do that soon, which I think I did it following year, actually, 97, I did. And you know, took a couple of pictures and then got back down from Everest, you know, and then went straight back to Pakistan after Everest and did 2 more 8,000s, Gasherbrum 1, Gasherbrum 2.
On the same trip, was that?
Yeah, back to back at 2. And so in that year, I'd done 3 8,000s, which is a big deal, 2-3 in a year, although people now do all of them in 7 months, but that's another story, how they do it. In those days, it was a big deal. And so that's when I'd got 8 of them done in 96. And that's when I thought, I'll do them all. Because I thought, I'm just over halfway.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided. And I'd done the hardest and the highest. So that's when I thought, I'll have a go at all of them then. And at that point, there was only 5 people on the planet that had ever done all of them. And I thought, well, I might be in the top 10, but obviously I was 13th, but only 12 of us left alive, you know.
When you said thank you, that's really interesting, because you might have just been putting it out to the universe. You might have been thanking God or your nemesis, the mountain itself. But maybe you had pushed your mind past where it had ever been before.
Yeah, I usually do say thank you after one of these 8,000. But I've hallucinated even in the Alps once. I remember once being in the North Face and the Matterhorn.
Okay.
And me and an American friend got caught in a storm. And then there was 2 Brits on the face as well. So there ended up being 4 of us caught in the storm on the North Face and Matterhorn. And so we didn't really have a ledge to sleep on. We just had to hang on all night in this thunder and lightning storm with no sleep. So it was sleep deprivation, which is what causes hallucination. And then we had to climb on the next day to get to the top of the Matterhorn. And maybe the next night as well. I remember at one point I was tied on to this steep mountainside on the North Face of the Matterhorn, which is nearly as hard as the North Face of the Eiger, well, similar anyway. And I was looking down on my mate. I'd led this pitch, and I'm looking down on my mate who would have his head torch on. It was pitch black. And I'm bringing the rope in up so he won't fall off. And I saw his head torch, and my mind thought that he was getting out of a tent. I imagined he was just sitting outside a tent and someone else was handing him a mug of tea. And I'm like, right, I need some of that. And I was like, right, and I was trying to undo me. I was tied onto the mountain with a belay, and I was trying to undo myself. And I'd better get down and have one of them. And then I had to go, hang on. And I'd slap myself like that. No, it's an hallucination. You know, it's just him with his head torch, and I need to keep the rope tight and bring him up to me, you know. So you do get these, if that's a hallucination or imagining things, because we were short of fluid, we were short of food, we'd had no sleep, and my mind imagined he was getting a drink off somebody else.
Yeah, possibly. So I didn't know whether I was going to ask this question, and I don't actually know the answer, but were there any tragedies on your expeditions? Or you mentioned about the year that when you summited K2, there were more tragedies than there were more deaths on the mountain than summits. Did you ever experience it firsthand with someone you were climbing with, Alan?
Yeah, now and again.
Yeah. Are you okay talking?
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole page on death in here about how I cope with it because of friends getting killed. Yeah. Not always when I was with them, sometimes on other expeditions. Yeah. One of my friends, Benoit Chamou and Pierre Royer, 2 good French friends that I mentioned, after I climbed K2 in 95, they invited me to go with them in the autumn for an expedition to Kangchenjunga. Yeah, to Kangchenjunga, the one that happened to be my last one. Yeah. And I said to Benoit, and I couldn't believe it was a fully funded exped, and I never turned down going to mountains. And I just, after K2, because there'd been lots of people killed on it, and one of them was Alison Hargreaves, a British woman out who I went with to K2.
Yeah.
We climbed together for the first 2 weeks,
Yep.
and then she changed to an American partner, and I climbed with an American partner. As I said, my American partner dropped back, and I ended up soloing to the summit. But unfortunately, Alison was one of the 5 killed later on. And so it did affect me. So when Benoit said, do you want to come in September to Kangchenjunga, and this was August when Alison was killed along with the other 4,
Yeah.
I just said, along with the other 7, there was 8 killed and 5 summited, yeah. And I said, I just don't feel like another 8,000, you know, I just can't get my head around it at the moment, Benoit, you know. And he says, I fully understand, Alan, you know, in his French accent. And I remember when I climbed K2, took a lot out of me. He'd been the fastest man up K2 when he did it. He did a speed climb of it. And so he fully understood. Anyway, they went to Kangchenjunga in September 95, and they both disappeared, both perished. And I sometimes think, well, if I'd gone with them, would I have died with them? Or if I'd gone with them, would I have not died and they would have? Or could I have stopped them dying? You know, and I'd like to have, well, I can't beat myself up about it, but I'd like to think I could have maybe tempered what they did. I would have thought they would have pushed to the summit. They were really proficient climbers, but they probably didn't think about what would happen on the descent, which to a certain extent I didn't. If you read the last chapter about Kanch, but I got away with it, as I always did. Even though it was by the skin of my teeth, I did have enough physically and mentally to get back down, because I did. And I didn't get avalanche, but maybe they did. So that was pretty upsetting. But anyway, the following year, 96, I did go to Everest, yeah. But, you know, it took a bit of getting over. Alison and then Benoit and Pierre getting killed and whatever. Lovely guys, well, lovely people, all of them. And now and again there were others on expeds. When I first started climbing with the Polish climbers in the late 80s, there was sadly some of them sometimes would get killed. You know, there's rockfall, which is like incoming Morty, get killed with rockfall, you get killed with avalanches, you can fall off. Or you can just die at the extreme altitude, get cerebral or pulmonary edema are the 2 killers of AMS, acute mountain sickness. Cerebral edema is like fluid retention in the brain. And pulmonary edema is fluid retention in the lungs. And those are the 2 things that kill you with AMS, acute mountain sickness, in the death zone. And we always say there's 3 cures for AMS, acute mountain sickness. There's 3 cures for pulmonary or cerebral edema, which is called HAPE or HACE, and those 3 cures are descent, descent, descent. The only cures really are to get down. People talk about using dexamethasone or nifedipine or acetazolamide, or even extra oxygen, but essentially if someone contracts serious AMS, you've got to get them down. And of course, it's not easy to get anyone down.
No.
Not at those extreme altitudes. You're just hanging on to life yourself, so it's very difficult to rescue anyone, yeah, sadly. And so you do come across quite a few bodies, and when I come across bodies, sometimes it's people I know, sometimes it isn't, but you do come across these bodies that are left on the mountain, and it does make you realise your mortality, and it does make you realise it can happen to you. So it is very poignant when you come across them. And people do say, why don't you bring them back down as well? And I have to say, well, not wishing to sound flippant, their mates didn't bring them back down, so why should I? But it's not easy. You can't, you know, I know you're a big bloke, but you couldn't carry me from here to the nearest pub, and we're at sea level in London.
I could try later.
Yeah, but, you know, and so it's not realistic to carry someone, you know. And, you know, I work with Mountain Rescue, and we generally talk about a minimum of like 8 people for a stretcher, 6 on it, 2 to keep rotating. So you need that amount of people to carry a body down. It's not practical. And sad, the other reason it's a death zone anyway, it's too high for a heli. You can't get a heli in to rescue anyone. The highest the heli can realistically go is, well, we used to say 6,000 metres, but you do get helis that go up to 6.5.
Do you?
I mean, the world record for a heli might be 8,000 metres, but that's just for a world record. Realistically, helis can't really go above 6.5, and they can't really winch and lift bodies, you know. So you're on your own. There's nothing anyone can do for you in the death zone, which is ironic, because if you're on the orbiting space station, the ISS, then they could send another spaceship up for you that can do something technologically. But there's nothing anyone can do for you in the death zone above 8,000 metres. Nothing technological. No helicopters, no spaceships, nothing.
And I guess
you're on your own.
Guess that's part of the attraction as well.
It still is dangerous going up Everest.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Alan. Can we bring it back to Outward Bound?
Yeah, Outward Bound's more important and more fun.
Well, yeah, it can be.
You're not in the death zone with Outward Bound.
Not the death zone, no. But
No,
we're in
you can do a bit of pleasant suffering if you're lucky. Getting chucked in the lake at silly o'clock
Yeah.
when it's freezing. But
Yeah.
You don't do as much of that now, but yeah.
Yeah, I've
It's definitely not the death zone, it's pleasant suffering. isn't
pleasant
it?
suffering. That's
Yeah.
that's a good concept. But I was really pleased when we came back in contact a few years ago, and we named one of our groups after you.
Oh, yeah, I was
the
flattered
Hinkes
with
group. Yeah, and it
I'd
was
often bump into them in the lakes when I was in
the groups out when you're out.
yeah,
in
on
lakes,
Elvelin and
yeah.
places. At Patterdale, I'd often bump into them.
Yeah.
And it was quite funny because I'd say, "Oh, what group are you?" And they say, "We're Hinkes group." And I'd say, "I am Alan Hinkes." And they wouldn't believe me because they thought I'd be dead because all the other names were dead people, like Scott of the Antarctic and whatever,
Yeah.
And I went, "No, I assure you I'm not dead." And the instructor would be laughing, And sometimes it wouldn't be the Hinkes group. I say, "Oh, is any of your friends in the Hinkes group?" And they go, "Yes." And he says, "Well, I'm Alan Hinkes." So, we're jealous now. We wanted to be in this group because we met you.
That's good.
But yeah, so no, I'm flattered he did that.
Yeah, it
Brilliant.
was great.
In
And
the
then-
Hinkes group. And I'm glad I'm not dead though.
And we had a summer adventure group named after you as well, and it was a pleasure taking you back to Ullswater and showing you, the kit stores that the groups used and all the kit and equipment we've got with your name on it. It was a real pleasure. Do you, just when you think about your mountain leadership course that you did at Ullswater, do you think that was integral to your mountaineering career afterwards? Do you think that was almost like a professionalisation of your passion, maybe?
To a certain extent it was, because I'd got a qualification which was called the Mountain Leadership Certificate.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it's a hill walking certificate, the MLC,
Yeah.
although you did used to do a bit of scrambling in it in them days.
Yeah.
And the instructors at OB Ullswater really impressed me.
Yeah.
They were so professional in the things they did and the way they were well within their comfort zones, I
Yeah.
could see. And it was rather flattering that they could see I was in my comfort zone, though, because some of them said that. And I could see there was one point when we were doing navigation, I did a couple of legs, and then they didn't bother with me. And I thought, well, I must have failed then. They're not bothering me anymore. But it's because they knew I could do it. One of these guys who became a friend, they gave him leg after leg after leg, and he
Yeah.
got more and more and more lost. And I could... And I was following, go, he's lost. Now he's even more lost. Now, and when you're doing assessing, you probably know that on navigation.
Yeah.
If they give someone else a leg, you have to know where that person's gone. Because
Yeah.
if that person goes wrong and then they give you the next leg, you have to know where you are.
Where you are, yeah.
And so I'll never forget, I was somebody, and then I thought, maybe they know I can do it. So I can't remember if they said, Alan, can you take over now or something like that. But,
Yeah.
someone had to get us back on track,
Yeah.
But they impressed me. I thought, I'd quite like to be an instructor like that. Well, then I did. I became an instructor like that, but it was in an
Yeah.
LEA centre
Yeah.
rather than an OB centre. But it could just have easily been an OB centre.
Yeah.
And so so they did impress me, the Outward Bound
Good.
instructors and assessors,
Yep.
and I did aspire to be like them, and I did sort of become like
Yeah.
them, and then I am
Yep.
even a mountain guide as well now.
Yep.
So yeah, it was very inspirational and seminal, the word as well. No, anyway, it was inspirational, and it did set me up, as you say. And the
Yeah.
MLC was the beginning. It was I guess you could call it a professional qualification.
Yeah.
It was a qualification that helped me get into outdoor ed. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So we had a thought about that we would do like an annual walk, which we've done the past. We did 3.
Yeah, I think we've had 3 now, haven't we? At least.
Where we take a group.
Yeah.
We powerboat a group over
Yeah.
Ullswater Lake and take them up for a bimble up to Hallenfell.
Well, it's the perfect place to do it because
Yeah.
you've got the 2 OB centres
Yep.
and we can go over the lake, which
Yep.
is impressive. Now, the row over,
Yep.
which we did one year, it was a bit windy this year, so we went over in the motorboat.
Some of us rode over.
Yeah. And then, so people see 2 OB centres,
Yeah.
and then it is just, it's not trying to beast people, it's
No,
just a
no.
lovely little
Yeah.
walk. Some people come the night before,
Yeah.
some stay the night after as well, and so they make a bit of a trip of it, and I'm quite happy to give a chat to them. I think it's great, really, yeah.
I love it,
Yeah.
and the people that come love it too. I've had only get good feedback from it, and it's living our values 'cause it's their stories,
Yeah.
it's their amazing stories, their connection, their almost like their. So a few of them speak about, that being their spiritual place where they go back to, and it's based on their Outward Bound first experience. So it's a
Yeah.
lovely place to go,
Yeah.
and capturing those stories, capturing the community.
Yeah.
I just think it gets gets better every year, and we probably get a bit more smart about how we do it and
Yeah.
film it and share it and
Yeah.
stuff. Because I want more people to come. I want more people to know that there is an alumni community, and I try to keep people informed and
Yeah.
show them that it's good to stay in touch. And I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's, they're our community. Do you know, estimated over 1 million people have done an Outward Bound course in the UK. 1 million people.
Yeah.
So it's like getting onto a
Yeah.
big old community there.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm chuffed you're part of it, Alan. I really
Yeah.
am. It's just such
I'm
a
honoured to be part of it.
pleasure
yeah.
to work with you,
Yeah.
mate. And,
It was amazing that there was this Hinkes group with.
Yeah.
They didn't ask me. They didn't need to. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
I think just based on your, you were chosen as someone that had accomplished something outstanding, and we could recognise that, and that would inspire people
Yeah.
as well to know about you and to learn about you.
They probably didn't realise I'd even got OB connections
Yeah.
when they did it. But now, obviously, I've got the going back a long time OB
Yeah.
connections.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And long may it continue. So just the book as well. So I know it is a fantastic read. Like, it's fascinating, and my kids have even read it as well, which is brilliant. It sits on our coffee table, but they have read it. What I will say is, if anyone wants to order a copy, they could order it through me, and then I could pass that on to you,
Yeah.
and maybe you could
Yeah.
even sign a few if you
Yeah.
wanted to.
Put whatever they want in it, dedicated
Yeah.
to whoever.
So if
They
people,
just send an email into you of
Yeah.
what they'd like written in it.
yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Good Christmas present. So just want to say thanks for doing it, Alan, doing the pods. Is there any advice you might, before you give your quote, any advice you might give to anyone contemplating an Outward Bound course, or contemplating taking on a challenge of their own, taking on a mountaineering challenge? Is there any advice that you would give?
Well, never underestimate any mountain, I would say, but just go and do it, really, because until you put one foot in front of the other, nothing's going to happen. In fact, there is another quote. There's a couple of quotes near. I mean, I could say the quote that's in the front then, which is like that, and the advice I would give people is, here we are, So, a bit of sort of advice. This was written by a chap called Bill Murray, W.H. Murray, and he was a Scottish mountain, he did lots of good Scottish things. It's about committing yourself to, in his case, a mountain expedition. And this was similar for me. You think, how can I get myself to the Himalaya? Where am I going to get the money from? Which isn't always sponsorship. You have to work and save your own money, but sometimes, some company will help you and give you a couple of grand here and a couple of grand there. But if you don't start something, it isn't going to happen. So that's the advice I'd give people to go on an Outward Bound. At least start it, get going. And this quote's rather poignant for it. So, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always an effectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favour all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, to which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I've learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. I know it sounds, but it does. You've just got to start something. You have a certain amount of boldness and sort of go for it. But don't be rash and always be prepared to have that micromanagement at times and back off. If you're going in the hills, I mean, nowadays we can find so much information out if you want to go into the hills with, before, after OB. You can check the weather on your phone, you can whatever, and make sure you should learn about the correct kit or whatever, And so it's just gain the experience, and enjoy the hills.
Yes. Do you want to finish on that quote?
Oh, yeah. So I think this has helped keep me alive and think ahead, because it has a lot of analogies in life, and it's about thinking ahead to think what the consequences might be, although I think the means does justify the end. But, I pushed the envelope on K2 and Kangchenjunga, but it has analogies in life, I think, what the consequences might be. I always say, if you go to the pub and you start drinking, think what might be the end, so don't drink too much. But it's about climbing, and it's climb if you will. But remember that courage and strength are naught without prudence, and that a momentary negligence may destroy the happiness of a lifetime. Do nothing in haste. Look well to each step, and from the beginning, think what may be the end. So I always think of that. That was written by Edward Whymper in the 1850s. He made the first ascent to Matterhorn, but I think that's a very poignant quote for mountaineering and thinking ahead, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alan Hinkes OBE.
Cheers. Great to
Thanks, mate.
be with you as always.
Really appreciate it. Thanks so
Good.
much.
Love being with you, mate.
Good man. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.